Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water with Joyce, Aldrich. Refresh your mind.
Welcome to this evening's edition of A Drink of Water. My name is Joyce Aldrich, and it's 25 degrees at 8:01 here at CHHA 1610 AM. And what a beautiful day we've had. And this evening we're going to have, coming to us from London, Ontario, via telephone, we're going to have Mark Vandermaas on from Israel Truth Week. And he believes that there can be no peace without truth, and we're going to have him talk about what that means right after we hear from Edward Bear and a great song from way back in 1970. It's called Mind Police, and Danny Marks on a great screaming guitar. So enjoy this, and we'll be back after this with Mark Vandermaas from Israel Truth Week. And here it is, Edward Bear. And that's Edward Bear and Mind Police, and that's from 1970. Danny Marks on guitar there. And online, my goodness, on telephone, we have Mark Vandermaas from Israel Truth Week. And I introduced you as someone who says there is no peace without truth. And that's all I said, because I thought, you're going to say the rest today. Mark, are you there?
I certainly am, and firstly, let me thank you for playing that song. It takes me back to my teens, and it was one of the most underappreciated songs, I think, on that album. And I think in an age of censorship and hysterical shrieking to attack people's views today that's going on now, I think that song was very, very appropriate. And when we talk about no peace without truth, your listeners may have gathered that we're talking about Israel and the Middle East. And that's what I do, is I share the truth about Israel's modern land title deed, the mandate for Palestine.
I was going to say you share a lot with the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, who says, all I've done with Israel is tell the truth.
Well, I think it was the author of Animal Farm, George Orwell, who said, during times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And what I do is kind of revolutionary, not only to Israel's enemies, but also to even some Jewish people themselves who have been so brainwashed by this so-called occupation narrative. And so I try to reach them. We were out on Sunday at the Walk for Israel, and I've got a great big banner that's 3 feet by 10 feet that says Jews are owners, not occupiers. Read Israel's land title deed. And I had a Jewish man come over to me and say, he started arguing with me. He was really mad, and he said, we got that land during defensive wars. And I said, yes, you're right. Did you read the sign? Yeah, I read the sign. And he clearly had taken my sign that said Jews are owners, not occupiers, and conflated it and somehow put Jews and occupiers together, and couldn't see past these monstrously big letters. And it was and I thought about it later, and I thought, wow, there are a lot of Jewish people out there that are just so attacked and demonized and brainwashed almost into believing this occupation narrative.
Well, it's
that's what I do, is I try to dispel that.
Well, when you have people, let's say come from communist-run countries like Cuba or Russia or former communist regimes, and they come into where a land where they're free, they have a lot of trouble believing that they are actually free and that they can be peaceful and that they can speak freely. And I do believe that for the Jewish people that has a similar resonating factor. So when you're put down for thousands of years and most recently with the Holocaust, the Shoah, in the Second World War, you can only take so many pogroms, so many genocide attempts, and you just say uncle. I don't know. It's very difficult for Jewish people.
Well, it certainly is, and that's where I
you want to apologize. You become an apologist.
Well, yes. I guess I am, and
I'm sorry for being victimized. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm not even Jewish.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not. So my parents lived under Nazi occupation in Holland, so I grew up with a sense of the Holocaust and the lessons about speaking out and speaking truth. And I remember reading Martin Niemöller's poem, Pastor Niemöller's poem, at an early age, and it's a famous one, and I'm sure you've heard it. There was, they came for the trade unionists, and I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. And they came for the communists, and I wasn't a communist, they didn't speak up. They came for the Jews, and I wasn't Jewish, so I didn't speak up. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And I remember reading that poem as a teenager, and I said, I will never be silent if Jewish people are under attack. Never, never. But I never really became an activist until much later in life, and I never dreamt that in my lifetime the Jewish people would be under attack today, not only physically, as they are in their state, as they are in Europe, being killed and victimized and demonized, but also under attack for their very legitimacy of their country. And, that's what I deal with. And I used to be like most people. I'm a former peacekeeper. I was with the UN in the Middle East in 1978.
You were a white helmet.
I was stationed on the Suez Canal in Egypt, and I traveled to Israel every time I could.
So a blue helmet or a white helmet?
I really got an appreciation for Israel, and like most people, I thought that Israel was created by the UN, and it wasn't until many years later, thanks to the great and late Salomon ben Zimra, author of The Jewish People's Rights to the Land of Israel, that I learned differently.
Yeah, I was going to say, were you a blue helmet or a white helmet? I know, but seriously, it's true.
Well, I'm hoping that's not too much of an inside joke, but the white helmets are basically liars, and the blue helmets, well, they're supposed to be trying to preserve the peace. So
I would hope the blue helmet. I was just going to say which one. I know which side you were on. Absolutely.
We were
absolutely.
And I loved Israel. Like when I climbed Mount Sinai on Easter Sunday before Israel gave it back for peace. I drove through Gaza, gave it back, or gave it to Israel, gave it to Egypt for peace. I drove through the minefields and through the Israeli orange groves in Gaza before Israel gave that stupidly gave it to these people who have brought nothing but destruction and death and terror to the state of Israel. And I swam in the Sea of Galilee, and I really, I just came to really appreciate Israel. But it wasn't until many years later when I did my first Israel Truth Week conference. There was some Jewish students in Western University, is what they call it now, here in London, and they were intimidated by a mob while the campus police.
I think I lost you there, Mark.
My first Israel Truth Week conference in the space of a couple of weeks, and away we went. And I was speaking at the conference, and there was a man in the audience named Salomon ben Zimra, who had written this amazing book about Israel's land rights. And,
sadly missed.
He outlined the history of how the Balfour Declaration of 1917 led to the San Remo Conference of 1920 after World War II or after World War I, where the Jews and the Arabs all submitted their claims to the Allied powers, and of course the Arabs got like 97% of the Middle East, and then it finally led to the Mandate for Palestine, which I call Israel's land title deed. And when I read that magnificent document, it's only 9 pages, I said, oh my, this is amazing. And what really needs to happen here is not only do we have to educate people about the history of this magnificent document and the promises that the world made to the Jewish people, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
We're going to talk about it after break, actually.
A moral argument.
Yeah, we're going to go to break right now, Mark, at 8:15, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes with more of that and discussing what the Mandate of Palestine is and the promises that were made by the world to the Jewish people. We'll be back right after this here on CHHA 1610 AM. We'll be back after these messages.
CHHA 1610 AM, Radio Voces Latinas, the first and only Hispanic radio station in Canada from Toronto to the world.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
If you're just tuning in to A Drink of Water here on CHHA 1610 AM, I have Mark Vandermaas of Israel Truth Week online from London, Ontario with me tonight, and we're talking about advocacy for Israel, the Mandate for Palestine. Before we went to break, you were just going to disclose a little bit about that.
Yes. It's really quite amazing when you read this document. It's called the Mandate for Palestine, and sometimes you'll hear it called the British Mandate, but it really wasn't. It was actually the world. The world created this document, and in it they say a number of things, but Britain was assigned to help Israel become a state. And there are certain terms in this document. There's a number of them.
And this was the League of Nations, right? The League of Nations, which ultimately became the UN, and they, of course, adopted all the League of Nations mandates, right?
Yes, and that's really, really important, that what you just said, because everything that's in the League of Nations mandate, and all of the mandates, I mean, Israel is not the only one that was created through a mandate. There's 14 countries, and nobody ever criticizes their borders. But Article 80 of the UN Charter enshrines those rights under international law. And this was a document under international law. So in 1917, Lord Balfour issued his very famous Balfour Declaration, which a lot of people have heard of, but it wasn't really international law. It was just a stated intent by one country that the Jews should have a national home. But by the time it reaches the stage in 1922, it's official now, the whole world made promises to the Jewish people, and in the preamble, I know we shouldn't read too much on the air, but your listeners really need to hear this. And it goes like this: whereas recognition has thereby been given to the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine and to the grounds for reconstituting their national home in that country. And then it goes on to talk about the different articles in that. But there's so many things that go on just in that little sentence. First of all, the entire world recognized that the Jewish people had historical ancient claims to the land of what was called Palestine. And a lot of your listeners might say, well, what that's about? They don't realize that Palestine was the name given to Judea and Samaria by Roman Emperor Hadrian around AD 135 with the intent of wiping out the Jewish history there. So people are confused. They think Palestine always existed as an Arab or a Muslim country. Never it was. No. It was a Jewish state of Judea and Samaria, and that was the name so they could try and deny the Jewish history there. So that's why this is called the Mandate for Palestine. Palestine was always the Jewish homeland, okay? And also says the historical connection of the Jewish people with the land. And then it goes on to saying reconstituting their national home. It doesn't say reconstituting. It says reconstituting. That means rebuilding what was lost. And what this document does is it recognizes, in effect, that the longest illegal occupation of over 2,000, almost 2,000 years was about to end with this document. It's magnificent. And then it goes on in Article 6, and it says that the administration of Palestine shall facilitate Jewish immigration and encourage close settlement by Jews on the land. This one document proves that anyone who says Jews stole land that didn't belong to them is lying, or they're misinformed. And that's how I like to treat people.
Misinformed, yeah, because
you're not lying until you know the truth, and a lot of people simply do not know the truth. Joyce, I've trained almost 500 people personally with a document, with a training booklet you can download on my website.
Which is
only 2% of my trainees have ever read the words of the Mandate for Palestine, and my trainees are all committed Zionists. How about that?
Amazing. And if people want to go to your website, it's israeltruthweek.org. So Israel
Yes, it is. And I have a full
org.
training program there that they can take now. So the first video is of Solomon Ben Zimra. We recorded this specifically at one of my conferences so that we could use it for training. And he shares the amazing history of the document. And then the second video is produced by actually Jews for Judaism,
which is amazing.
Who traveled out to Kingston to record one of my live seminars, and it's a really well-produced video, and you can also download my training booklet. And I promise your listeners, if you really want to know the truth about whether Jews are owners or occupiers, you watch these two videos and download my training booklet. When you're done, you will know more about Israel's land rights than probably 99% of the people in the world. I promise you that.
Which is a shame. And the Jewish population is so small. 15 million maybe in the whole of the world, and 7 million Jews actually live in the land of Israel. So you're looking at almost half the Jews in the world are actually living already in Israel, which is amazing.
Yes.
And people don't realize that, and the rest are diaspora.
Know their own history. That's the stunning part about this, because Salomon Ben Zimra and his partner Goldie Steiner from Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights went to Israel, met with different MKs, and of course some of them have endorsed the book that he wrote. And they told me that Israel, believe it or not, does not teach its children about their land rights. I mean, you can go. I remember reading Exodus. There's barely a mention of the mandate for Palestine. I mean, they reference it in passing.
Yeah, the Leon Uris book.
If you watch, you watch a movie, the movie. I'm wondering, well, why are the Jews fighting against the British? Well, once you understand the mandate for Palestine, you realize that the British had an obligation to help the Jews resettle the land. And in World War II, right on the eve of the Holocaust, Britain, under pressure from the Muslims that were in the area at the time, shut off the Jews from getting into their national home. That's the word that's in the document. On the eve of the Holocaust, and we don't know how many countless Jews died because Britain failed to keep its promises.
Yeah, and there seem to be a lot of failed promises on that side, because I understand also with in the case of Judea and Samaria, which I believe became Transjordan, the British basically turned it over.
Well, that's interesting, because you'll say, well, what are the borders of Israel-Palestine, Mark? Well, who owns the land? Well, let me give you the short version. The short version is, according to the Mandate for Palestine, which is international law, by the way, Jews own everything west of the Jordan River. Okay? They were promised, in the original mandate, in Article 25, it sets out Palestine as the Jewish homeland was supposed to correspond, really, with the original tribes of Israel, and that included some land on the east side of the
ancient borders.
River. What's that?
The ancient borders.
The ancient borders, and that's what the Zionist Council wanted. That's the claim they submitted. So the original mandate included land east of the Jordan River, but they hadn't really, at the time, Britain hadn't really decided where the border was. So they wrote it up in Article 25, saying that the mandatory power, which would be Great Britain acting on behalf of the world, could withhold Jewish settlement from the areas east of the Jordan River. So what does that tell you? That is a stupendous statement, because it tells you that not only were Jews to get all the land west of the Jordan River, including what some people would call disputed territories, they were also supposed to get land on the east side. So what happened was, in September, later in that year, Britain exercised that option in the mandate and took the land from the Jews, and they did it under international law. Some people would disagree, but it was right in the mandate, and they gave it for the creation of Jordan. So guess what? They took Jewish land in 1922 and gave it to the Arabs to create another state, and you know what I call that? The original two-state solution. So the Jewish homeland has already been divided once.
And I understand that 95...
Why are we talking about a new two-state solution when we should be talking about the original one?
And I understand that 95% of the population of Jordan are quote-unquote Palestinians. We're going to have to go to... We're going to go to break. Well, you know what I'm saying. There's a large contingency. It's almost like that is the land. We're going to go to break because it's coming up to 8:28, and we have to go to commercials every so often. But Mark, we're going to continue on you did the short version. We'll have the long version after this break coming up. So I want our listeners, no, we don't have viewers. Well, you never know in this day and age with the mind police. But I encourage people to go to IsraelTruthWeek.org while we're going to break and take a look at that. And we'll be back right after these messages. There's more of Mark Vandermaas of Israel Truth Week. And I'm Joyce Aldrich here on A Drink of Water on CHHA 1610 AM. So stay tuned.
Listen to us all around the world. Visit CHHA1610am.ca for new content daily.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Caught the spirit down in Monterey and Woodstock, Berkeley, Chicago, 68. The March on Washington with Martin Luther King. He said, I have a dream, I have a dream. Catch the spirit, ride the wind, catch the spirit. It's free again, it's free again. I caught the spirit at the Love and down in Queen's Park. Young people came from everywhere, singing songs about peace and love and freedom. A girl put a flower in my hair. Catch the spirit, ride the wind, catch the spirit. It's free again, it's free again. Walking down the streets in Yorkville, young people calling out for change. Bill Oakes was singing, I ain't marching anymore. He's gone, but his song goes on and on and on and on and on. Catch the spirit, ride the wind, catch the spirit. It's free again, it's free again. Catch the spirit, ride the wind, catch the spirit. It's free again, it's free again.
And that's is Roger Ellis, who was the lead guitarist for Edward Bear, and that's one of his solo releases called Catch the Spirit. And it's 8:34 here at CHHA 1610 AM, and I have Mark Vandermaas online. If you've been listening in, he's been talking about truth and freedom and advocacy for Israel, and we've been talking about the mandate of Palestine. And you gave the short version before the break, and you're on.
Well, thank you very much. You know,
back to you.
About freedom, it's kind of funny because, you know, my training program is called Liberating Israel. And when I talk about liberating Israel, I'm liberating Israel from the occupation myth. And it's so powerful, too, because, you know, there is... What's amazing to me is that the people who have perpetuated this occupation myth have no real legal underlying foundation of legal doctrine. There's no mandate for Palestine for the people who call themselves Palestinians today, the Arab Palestinians.
Yeah.
They got most of the Middle East, and they got mandates. There were mandates for Iraq, and it eventually it actually became a kingdom. They set up a king instead, but they were part of that process. Syria and Lebanon were a mandate. Jordan became a country out of the mandate system. There were many other countries, but
many countries were created at that time to create borders, and of course there's tribalism within there, which also caused some problems too. But that's another that's another show.
And you know, you'll have people that will say, well, yeah, Mark, they were colonials, they didn't have the right to change the borders. Well, actually, they rewrote they redrew the borders of Europe after World War I.
Yeah. And it's done regularly in this
How come it's only the Jewish state whose borders are questioned? I mean, it's immoral. It's absolutely immoral. And it's funny how people are so eager to try to disparage the rights of the Jewish people that were set out in the mandate for Palestine. And it's absolutely immoral. Like in 1922, the whole world recognized that Jews were the owners of Palestine, Israel.
Well before 1948.
Call it. Yeah. And now today, they're doing their best to take it away. And I think Jews should be able to trust the world's promises. And the world has done a really bad job of keeping those promises. And as I said before the break, there were countless Jews died because they were illegally kept out of their homeland. Yeah. And Britain has never apologized for that. And I think that's really, really sad. And so what I do is I take the legal documents. I mean, there are other experts. I mean, Salomon just wrote the smallest book because he summarized it. But before Salomon, I mean, there was Dr. Jacques Gauthier, who's an expert. His doctoral thesis is on the sovereignty over the old city of Jerusalem. It's 1,142 pages long, and it weighs 10 pounds. I have a copy of it. And
I've seen that.
In excruciating detail, it outlines the legal case that Jews are owners. And then there's Howard Grief. He wrote a 731-page book. Weighs 3 pounds. I measured it. So you stack this on the table, and there are 13, probably 14 pounds of reference material and legal information that prove that Jews are owners. The problem is there's nowhere to go to a court to get it to get this recognized. In other words, you can't take all this legal research to these enemies who are trying to kill Jews and say, see here, look, it says here's all the legalities. Now you have to love us, because it doesn't happen that way.
You would think
so you have to use what I do that's very unique is I build on the research of these giants, and I say, now I'm going to turn that into a moral narrative. And my moral narrative is, like if somebody said to you, the average Jewish person, tell me about occupation. You're an occupying power. And the archaeology proves it. Oh, and the history and the Bible, and they struggle to actually explain why it's not. And my narrative is different, and my narrative is based on the mandate. And I say there can be no peace without truth. And the truth is, Jews are owners, not occupiers, because they have a land title deed from the original two-state solution, the 1922 mandate for Palestine, in which the whole world returned their homeland to them and told them to rebuild it everywhere west of the Jordan River. Jews died because they were kept out of it, and now the world wants to take it away, and Jews should be able to trust the world's promises. Why are we talking about a new two-state solution when the world failed to honor the original? It's immoral, and it's unjust, and it's time to stop talking about solutions and talk about truth.
And how is it that
moratorium?
And how is
and that's
it?
my narrative.
And it's an excellent one, and it is the truth. And how is it that we can't take that to the UN, which is where all of this is where the truth lies? Yet that seems to be the one place where it's completely denied.
Well, it is, and of course, it's in violation of Article 80. It's dominated by the 53 or 56 states from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, so that makes it very difficult. And so the problem is that the government of Israel doesn't even make an argument like this. I mean, I wrote a speech in my training booklet, which you can download at
What prevents them, do you think?
I wrote a speech. I woke up one morning, and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was just, it's like I'm a Christian, so I would say it's like God put a speech. I said, what speech would I write for Bibi, the Prime Minister of Israel, if I was going to implement a moral narrative and declare a moratorium? And I wrote this speech in a couple of hours, and it really hasn't changed. It didn't change much, and you can read that in there. And the problem is, like, people ask me, my Gentile friends are always asking me, Mark, why don't the Jews talk about this? Why doesn't the state of Israel talk about this?
Yeah, what's preventing them?
And the best answer I've heard from a Jewish lady is that it's like a battered wife syndrome.
Right.
They're so beaten down and so afraid that things will get worse that they're terrified of telling the truth.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier about the communist mentality, too.
We are owners, not occupiers.
Right.
And that whole world. So for us we have to put the UN on the defensive. Israel needs to demand an apology from the UN for refusing to honor Article 80. Israel needs to demand an apology from Great Britain for all the Jews that died because they were illegally kept out of Israel-Palestine during the war. Horrible. And we have to influence public opinion. And you know, the so-called the Arab Palestinians, that's what they do. They have this very simple narrative that says, you stole our land, we get to kill you because we're freedom fighters. If you defend yourselves, you're ethnic cleansing murderers. And the world has bought into that false narrative. And so we have to counter that. It's a moral narrative, so we have to counter that.
And your countering is, we are owners, not occupiers. Is that correct? Yes.
Owners, not occupiers. And that is the absolute truth. But it's terrifying for people to say that. I mean, if you think about what the normal Israel advocacy consists of, okay? And these are all well-meaning people, okay? Nobody talks about Israel's land rights. Nobody. You'll get in it. Let's assume, Joyce, that you're accusing me of stealing your land. Like, you've got, our houses are adjoining one another, and you're accusing, you stole my land. And my defense to you is, well, you know what? The neighbor on the other side of you is worse. So why don't you, deal with him? Or if I say to you, yeah, but my people are really nice. They invented the internet, and they invented all these medical procedures and breakthroughs. Or
SodaStream.
I need your land for defense.
Yeah.
It's not. Those arguments only reinforce the idea that Israel stole that land. That false idea. What I suggested, like, if you were accusing me, I wouldn't say that. I'd go into court and I'd hold up my land title deed, the mandate for Palestine, and they'd say, excuse me, Your Honor, we're owners, not occupiers. Tell this lady to stop attacking me and stop demonizing me and stop slandering me. But Jews so many Jews are so afraid of doing that. And, I like to say, somebody actually called me radical. I had a Jewish person say, well, Mark, that's very radical. I said, the truth is radical? I said, listen, right now you have no peace and no truth. If you at least held up your land title deed and said, no, we're not talking about solutions until the world recognizes the promises it made to us, at least you can walk in the light of truth.
And at the march, the UJA on Sunday, what was the reaction of people as they walked by your signs?
Well, we were in two spots. The first was in the morning when people were sort of getting there. Not a lot of people paid attention to us, but there was that one man that I mentioned to you who came over, and he was actually kind of a leader. Like he wasn't just an ordinary attendee. He was a leader in Jewish advocacy, and he was quite hostile.
But percentages-wise,
he automatically assumed that because we were there with a sign, that we must hate Israel.
Yes, but there must have been a percentage of people who were okay with that, though, that understood it.
Oh, yeah.
What were the percentages as thousands of people went by your sign?
By the way, he came back with his daughter, who knows me and who's attended one of my trainings. And he was a little sheepish. He said, "I owe you a big apology."
Oh, okay.
I said, "I understand that. Look, don't feel badly about that, sir. But it demonstrates the sheer power of this awful occupation narrative that Jews themselves have bought into it so much. And it's, we did a we're
going to go to break, Mark. I hate to interrupt like this. We've got to go to break. It's 8:45. We'll come back and we'll come back with more of this.
We'll talk about reactions.
We're going to talk about reactions. You got it. You got it. Okay, we'll be back right after these messages.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Hello, I'm Joyce Aldrich, and I'm here with Mark Vandermaas of Israel Truth Week, and that's israeltruthweek.org if you want to go to the website. We're talking about reactions to the truth.
In contrast to the negative one, early in the morning, later we moved to another spot close to the finish line so we could congratulate the people and applaud them when they were finishing. And there were about 18,000 people there.
That's amazing.
That walked by us.
Wow.
We got a lot of thumbs up. A lot of them, some people stopped to talk.
Right.
But a lot of people were very, very positive. And as they passed by, we said, "Thank you, congratulations." We said, "Tell your kids they're owners, not occupiers." And I think that's why I do this, is that I don't think a Jewish child should have to go to bed one more night believing that their people stole land, because it's not true.
It's not the truth.
Not true at all.
It's a very hopeful message, and one hopefully it'll permeate, because the Jewish people and the minds of the world, because Jewish people, like I said, very small number of people on the planet versus billions. And that's part of the struggle, isn't it, really? It's numbers. It's a numbers game, too, isn't it, really?
Well, it is numbers, but, there's something special about Jewish people. And, I don't know how, if your listeners are religious or not, but, the Bible says God blesses those who bless Israel. And Israel is a miracle. The contributions these people, the Jewish people, have made to the world are just, staggering. And I think and even if you're not religious, the Jews have suffered enough. They have suffered enough, and it is
enough already.
Enough already.
Yeah.
That here you are. They've got this tiny little sliver of land that is there.
6 kilometers across at some points.
And you've got to, please stop trying to take that away from them. And some people say, "Well, Mark, what's the solution?" I'll tell you what the solution is.
Yeah.
Stop talking about solutions and start talking about truth. And what is the truth? I mean, you got to answer some questions. Are Jews owners or occupiers? There's the question.
Owners.
Did the world make promises to the Jewish people? Yes or no?
Yes.
Did the world keep those promises to the Jewish people?
No.
Should the world keep the promises to the Jewish people? These are all questions that nobody in the Israel advocacy field and the state of Israel are even asking. And imagine if Bibi had gone on during a Gaza war, this latest episode, and somebody said occupation, and he said, "Well, Sir Jake Tapper of CNN, that we can't have peace without truth, and the truth is that Jewish people are owners, not occupiers, because we have a land title deed from the world, and you can read it right here." You would have had every journalist in the world running on Googling mandate for Palestine. And let me assure you, if only 2% of committed Zionists, whether Christian or Jewish, have read the magnificent words of Israel's land title deed, how can we fault Jewish kids even and other high school or university students for not knowing that history and believing that Jews were really occupiers? And so that's my mission. I want to train 10,000 Zionist freedom fighters to liberate Israel from the occupation narrative.
Well, you know what? I have to say, Mark, we're coming up to the end of the program.
Wow.
And I want to really, seriously, because I want to play something for you, because it's called Kickstart by Zedhead. I don't know if you know that group.
But, I don't. I'm old.
Neil Chapman with his screaming guitars. But no, they're an older group. But the thing is, I wanted to thank you so much for your advocacy, and IsraelTruthWeek.org if you want to find more about it, and the training, of course, that you're doing. And you're going to be moving on, but you're not moving out. You're getting closer to Israel. And
yes.
I know that your wife tells me you've named every cat that you've had after a motorcycle.
That's true. We've had Harley, we've had Beamer, and now we have Royal Enfield, and he's amazing.
Well,
Thank you for having me on, Joyce. I need to say that. And if any of your Pete listeners go to IsraelTruthWeek.org and watch the 2 videos, download the training manual, and they have any questions, they
give you a call
to the bottom, send me an email, and my phone number's there too. I'm glad to talk to them, because some people have, gee, Mark, but what about this?
Exactly.
And I can answer those questions, okay?
An absolute gem, and for all the Jewish people, on behalf of everyone, I do thank you. And we can't be afraid to speak the truth, because, like I said, Nikki Haley said, all I've done with Israel is tell the truth, and that's what we're doing tonight. All we're doing tonight is telling the truth. So here it is. This is Zedhead Kickstart, and then we'll come back with a short message, hopefully, regarding Inti Raymi, which is coming up in June. Okay, we'll be back right after this. Listen to Kickstart. Enjoy this, Mark. This is for you.
Thank you so much.
Screaming guitars.
Take
Bedhead with Kickstart. Do you like that, Mark?
I love that.
Anyway, I'm just going to let people know that coming up on June 23rd and June 24th, that's Inti Raymi, the Summer Solstice Festival. It's one of our fundraisers here for CHHA 1610 AM. And we're going to have artists, bands, delicious Latin American plates. You might want to come out, Mark, before you head out to New Brunswick. That's Saturday, June 23rd and Sunday, June 24th at 2999 Dufferin Street at Fieldstone Day School. The soccer field just behind San Lorenzo Church, just off Wenderley, one light south of Lawrence Avenue. So come on out. And I'm going to be singing, so what the heck, eh? I'll be singing on Sundays.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome, so we'll have fun. So maybe before you head on out, you can head on down and have a great day with, and I'll introduce you to Father Hernan Astudillo. I think you'd really like him. I think you're twin spirits.
Well, thank you. You're very kind.
Yeah.
And it'll be a treat to listen to you.
Okay, well, we're going to head on out then. And coming up is the Punjabi Show. Thank you very much. We're out.
At CHHA 1610 AM.